So let's begin with origin stories. This distillery was founded in 1989 when everyone was drinking Baby Sham and Pina Coladas and Blue Nun. What was it like opening a craft cider brandy distillery in that time space? And did you feel that there was a movement towards craft distilling at the time, or was it really a shot in the dark?
I've been a cider maker for the last 50 years. The farm has been making cider for at least 300 years. As a cider maker, I've answered the question fairly endlessly when the public say, why don't you make Calvados? And the answer always was, I don't want to go to prison. The tax on a barrel of cider brandy, like this barrel here alongside us, is about £10,000 each barrel. So the offence of distilling under hedge privately is quite heavy, and we haven't been allowed to distill for a very long time in England. And as a cider maker, I always felt that cider was vastly undervalued. The orchard tradition, the apple varieties, the cider tradition goes back to the Norman conquest. And it should have always been treated with a lot more respect than it has been. And a spirit seemed to be the obvious answer. And our spirit is finding market in posh restaurants, posh other places that cider might follow in due course, but it's blazed the trail for cider. And so the feeling was that it would be a good idea. And certainly when we started, one of my colleagues from not far away, old man called Mr. Perry, was here one day. And he said about distilling, he said he wished it was him. He was glad it was us. But the most important thing, he said, is that it has happened because the cider market needed a boost. And we now have a restaurant in London which has 3 Michelin stars and is our best customer. It sells roughly 200 bottles of 10-year-old a year in his restaurant. And we need more of those. But for the cider industry, you can plant an orchard now and thinking that the apples might well go for distilling, which increases the romance, the dream. And we can look at Europeans in the face without actually sort of whinging about we're not doing this and we're not doing that. It has done us, as cider makers, a huge amount of good, just in the image. I could say this pile of barrels here is the crown jewels of the English cider industry. You might disagree, but it's certainly got some validity.
Do you think other cider makers view cider brandy in that way?
I might say to them, this is what cider makers do when they grow up. So it doesn't necessarily make us the most popular people on the block.
No.
But in promoting cider brandy, we promote the story of orchards and apples, the culture. And in Somerset, everybody has cider very close to the surface in their heritage. And they all look protective. I suppose the word is jealous of the cider world, which in that word, jealous means protective of rather than nicked off something. And I think they're pleased on the whole to find, yesterday we delivered a bottle to the king. The king says that he was to the man that delivered it to him, which was a fellow he was granting an audience to for but he recalls that we delivered him a bottle about 10 years ago. from the same man. That is the ultimate dream of where we need to be, but we can be. But we can knock on the door of a Michelin-star restaurant and expect them to at least consider what we have, rather than slamming the door and telling us to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
We are proud of cider, we're proud of apples, and we have something to relate to now.
Yeah. Do you think a raw warrant might be on the cards at some point?
Today we have a very, very famous potter that used to live down the road. He's dead now, but his operation carries on. And the son came in this morning and said it was Friday. And on Friday they pay the wages. And with the wages, they've always shared a glass of cider brandy on the Friday. In fact, he told me then that the man in charge of the potting part of the pottery said that if he didn't maintain that tradition, he'd be leaving. I think he was slightly joking, but that's the sort of market we want, when local people share the matter that they can be proud of. We're proud of them making some of the best pots in Western Europe, and they're proud, and they will continue having our product as a local thing and celebrate it once a week. But
that was a brilliant avoidance of that question, wasn't it, in light of current news?
Yeah.
I was forgetting actually what the question was.
Raw warrant, but it was I don't know, maybe it's not a serious, maybe it is a serious question, but
well, I think less. I think we'll be thinking less favourably of that.
On raw warrants, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
For the moment.
Say no more. But no, it's interesting what you're saying about, I guess, cider brandy potentially being another access point to cider, where it can be served. I mean, some people would say there are ciders that can be served after a meal, but certainly cider brandy seems more appropriate for that occasion, or, in certain types of cocktail. I'm just interested about how it sits alongside cider. Is it a sort of you can start talking in a minute. Is it a tool that can be used to help market cider, or is it a separate entity?
I think there's a little bit of crossover. I think mostly it sits as a separate entity. You have your cider customers and your brandy customers, and then there is some crossover. But ice cider, which we also make, very much sits in the same category of the after dinner drink, and often people will be interested in the spirit range and then an ice cider.
And ice cider is when you chill the cider and concentrate.
Yeah, you freeze, concentrate the juice, and then you ferment that juice.
That's
so
right.
it's like
higher strength and sweet, and you just leave residual sweetness.
Loads of residual sweetness and loads of flavour. It takes a couple of hundred apples just to make one small bottle of ice cider. So it's a very unusual product.
Yeah, sort of sits in dessert wine kind of territory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I told you I was at the Newt the other week, and I tried. I think they do a couple of ice ciders.
I haven't tried their new one, but they did Eating Apple, one from Eating Apples, and I've seen that they've just done a cider apple one, which I have yet to taste.
So yeah, going back to the origins, how you're not exactly creating a new category here. This is a sort of revival of an old tradition in Somerset. How what was your sort of research like? How cognizant were you of the history and traditions of cider brandy making, and how did that inform your processes and your production techniques?
I think probably before Julian will tell you about the history, Julian started on a museum license in 87 before we got the first ever commercial license in 89. And that museum license, I guess, came about a lot because it was reviving something historical. And as far as records goes back, Julian will tell you that.
We sort of alleged that it was reviving, and there must have been a time when distilling mainly was behind the hedgerow, and then you'd pass it off as smuggled goods, recently smuggled from France, because smuggling stuff in from France, when you have places like Golden Cap, which have in Dorset, which have an amazing view of the hundreds of miles of ocean,
Yeah.
and you didn't have mobile phones in those days, was a really complicated business. And there must have been distilling locally, and certainly when we started, the customs said, had I had discussions with a man in Devon. At that time, the man was the first gentleman of Devon cider making. I did talk to him about distilling, and he knew a hell of a lot more than he should have done.
For someone who didn't distill.
And he said that he'd since buried his still, so they couldn't catch him anymore. In fact, we had his grandson here the other day, and he said he'd never discussed distilling with his grandfather. But after I told him what I knew about his grandfather's distilling and his cider making activities, I think I gave him a thought that he might better go off and buy a metal detector. But the fact that the customs knew this guy had a big knowledge of distilling, which he shouldn't have had unless he was doing it, means that there's more there than is allegedly anybody's aware of. But there's also times before, when people were doing research into cider, there was distilled products coming on the out there. The closest we have to that was an abbey about 5 miles away. And in 1536, when the abbot died, he left his collection of glasses and his distilling equipment to one of the monks. So he must have been distilling something. And round here, I would have thought that distilling cider would be the obvious chance. But there must have been more distilling than we know of, and there's only little snippets come up every now and again. We're pretty thick in the countryside, but we're not that stupid. And it's not that complicated. In Brittany, the sort of people distill on the sort of thing you put on your range, which is just really an upside-down kettle. And what they produce and what you can produce here in the same process, on a farm basis or a private house basis, is a very acceptable. You must likely end up with a terrible headache. But it's all which is available in Brittany. And Brittany has a cider brandy tradition, which is equal to Calvados, and some of the products they make is really excellent, which they shouldn't be. But so the answer is that we need to invent ourselves a history, if nothing else. But we are the obvious answer to us in trying to improve the product and the market position of what we make. I mean, we do make some complicated ciders, bottle conditioned like champagne-wise, but they haven't succeeded in raising the cider market in the way that our cider brandy has. We have largely built what we have from scratch.
What was it like in the 80s trying to get a license to distill spirits? Because there was no precedent of any craft distilleries in the UK at that time, right? You are effectively the first in the UK.
We are effectively the first, although there was a gentleman called Bertrand Bulmer who founded the modern cider industry, really, of the Bulmer's cider company. When he retired in 85, he built himself a cider museum, and he asked for permission for a museum and educational distillery, which, as is one of the richest men in the country, the customs had a job refusing him. But eventually they roughly agreed that he could make distill as an educational operation, not for sale and not this and not that. And we used exactly that. The customs, when we first started, they said on no account must you use what Bertrand is doing as a precedent. But we did use it as a precedent, but it was always an unspoken fact that was there. And once he'd been granted a museum distillery, there was little logical objections they could find. They did find many of them, and they had lots of fallback positions. But at the same time, the customs were caught up with the romance of it all. And
You found the right customs officer by the sounds of things.
yes, once I was singing the praises of the man in charge of the Southwest, and one of his officers turned round and said that he was only flattering his own ego. I don't care what he was flattering, but the answer is that eventually they agreed. But we were pretty determined in how we went about it. We now have a distillery, which is... other people are using other things in distilling, but essentially we are still the only apple distillery in England. We are now PGI registered, which means that our apples have to come from Somerset. They have to be checked up, but they come from Somerset. They've got to be made out of traditional apples, not sort of eating damn things or other things. And
traditional orchards, not bush orchards, no pesticides, etc., etc.
And so we have blazed the way. I mean, looking back at it, we must have been deranged, because we got barrels and we've put them away for 20 years, and it's proved to be worth it.
I think when we first started, the rules and regulations were completely different from today. So initially they didn't want us to store our own spirit. They didn't trust us to store our own spirit. The stills weren't trusted to be on the same site here. They had to be a few miles away in case any spirit got diverted, and the customs officers used to turn up unannounced all the time. Julian used to have a horse on standby because one of them loved horses, and every time the customs officer turned up, the horse would come up. And there was all sorts of rules and regulations, and every year they get more and more relaxed. So it's a completely, even from when I started 10 years ago to today, everything is completely different. Just how you keep your spirit is completely different. What can be a bonded warehouse is completely different. We used to have to, our architect's drawings of our stills were huge. Every single bolt and pin and seal was listed with so much detail. And now if I message the customs and say, we want to get a new still, shall we send you the details? They say, we don't care. We don't need to know. So it's a different...
The climate has changed entirely, hasn't it? I mean, even in my time in the drinks industry, 25 years, obviously the landscape's changed enormously. I mean, you guys were 89. I think Penderyn were about 2000.
87 for the museum.
87 for the museum. And then I think Chase maybe would have been the next small distillery in England, and that was 2008.
Wow.
So you were going 20 years in England as the only small distillery. What was it like during that period? Because it's not like you've got other craft distilleries popping up that are sort of validating what you're doing and saying, oh, there's a movement underway here. You're kind of operating on your own trying to establish basically a new category of drink, albeit one that's has some relation to Calvados and, other apple spirits. In Somerset, on a very small scale, up against it with customs who want to know every single rivet and dent on a still, and trying to kind of market this as well to presumably an audience of people who are like, wait, what, you're making a aged spirit in Somerset from apples? There's no basis for comparison apart from Calvados, I suppose, to anything, and no other English spirits that you can kind of join forces with to help with this sort of movement at that time.
I think Julian's often been described as having sheer bloody-mindedness and loves nothing more than a challenge in life.
Yeah.
So I think it's insane as a business model. I think probably it's still insane as a business model, but it is romance and of all the people we have 12 people working on the farm, and I think probably 20 years is the sort of average time that they've all been here. So people come here and they stay a lifetime. And everyone's invested in the sort of the romance of the idea, which comes from the orchards.
Yeah, you're a family business, and you've got people who have effectively been here so long, they're kind of family too. Yeah. How do you think being a family business sort of shapes the direction of what you're doing?
I don't think it would work if it's not a family business, because...
Hold on. What we're distilling this year, and the same applies to previous years, is going into barrels. Most of it will go into barrels, and some of it will come out in 20 years' time, in which case I'll be somewhere over 100. And so it has to be a family business. And if I leave the future with a decent few barrels, they have a job to do to flog it. But we have started something that most likely won't stop now. And so it makes sense in the long term. And in a way, it has to be a family business to carry on that way. I mean, what I wonder now is why we were stupid at what seemed at the time to be stupid, really, looking back at it, that we did lay barrels down for 20 years and 30 years. This pile of barrels is roughly 300. Next door we have 350. We have a tax liability of about £7 million, which we can leave for the next generation to pay. But now we have a family, so I can take a back seat. And we'll leave it to Matilda.
So next week, Julian and I are planting pear trees. And every year, well, usually we plant around Valentine's Day, but it's too bloody wet out there. So we're planting pear trees, and Julian's planting them not for my generation, but for the generation after. And these pear trees aren't going to be fruiting properly until my kids are young now, are middle-aged.
Wow.
They're really just coming into their own in 40 years' time. In
the farming world, you always say you plant an apple tree for your children and a pear tree for your grandchildren. And they're very long. A pear tree will live 3 times longer than an apple tree. And
but it takes longer to get to maturity.
And they get some horrible diseases as well.
Right.
But the tradition around a pear tree is very similar. But in for pear fanatics, they would say that if you can't see the church tower at Saul, which is in Gloucestershire, in the Severn Valley, it's not proper perry.
What do you say to that?
I would say we're making jolly good second-class perry. But we grow perry pears, which are jolly good. But it's nice that the pear culture is taken as seriously as that.
How long have you been growing pears for?
20 years.
Okay, so are you making any pear spirit?
We have done. We've made some pear spirit, but it has we've had bad pear harvests for a few years, so we haven't made any for a few years, and we have, I think the Ritz bought our last 10 cases of Perry Spirit.
Shall we taste some apple spirit?
You could,
Let's do that.
should,
Yeah, let's go.
But, yeah, with glasses, yeah.
So this will be last year's Apple Eau de Vie.
This is very similar to what we're distilling today,
Mm-hmm.
but this
Thank you.
will go off into barrels and come out as a serious contender for something in 20 years' time.
Oh, it's a bit cold.
Just have to warm it up in the mouth. So let's talk about apples then. What varieties of apples are you growing here?
Well, we grow about well over 100 varieties of apples, and so just this autumn, just in this top orchard, so we've got 250 acres, and just in the 3 acres in our top orchard, we went through, and I have a list of, I knew we had 20 different types of apples in there, and when we went through tree by tree and identified them, actually we had 32 varieties of apples, and we DNA sequenced another old orchard and found another 20 varieties we didn't even know we grew. So we have 40 main varieties, but we have around 150 other varieties of all sorts. Some are only 1 tree, some might be 5 trees, but
For making cider, you need a variety that we have to blend the apples to make the sort of cider we're looking for. Basically, it means on one side we have high tannin apples, which are the core of the cider apple market, but we also need high acid apples, and we blend the apples so we get the juice, which is the right acidity and the right body. And that's the basis of all cider making. And so single variety ciders happen. They only come from some special apples. But it is the magic and the mystery of a cider maker's art, is the blending of different varieties of apples.
And the apples that we grow on this farm, most of them have originated from within 10 miles of the farm. So we've got varieties like Borough Hill Early that originated on this farm.
Named after the farm.
Named after the farm. And we think things like Dabinet, which you'll have heard of, that came from about 4 fields away. Porter's Perfection came from the neighbouring village.
In 1880, by a family who most likely came from Normandy in 1066. But they found the apple, and now Dabinet is the most widely grown cider apple. It's a very good apple, but it's a Kingsbury apple.
So Kingsbury is considered in the cider world to have the best provenance of any village for apples. And that's been recognised by all the research centres going back.
So when you're making cider brandy or cider apple eau de vie, like we're just drinking here, is it the same blend of apples that you'd use to make a great cider that you'd use to distill?
Yes, it is. And you have to, for us, with cider brandy, we have at least 20 varieties, if not more, of cider apple in each cider that we put through the stills.
And that's a condition of the PGI boys.
Yeah, the Calvados would have the same rules. And again, all cider apples, all from traditional orchards, and then nothing added along the way.
We'll get back to production in a second maybe, but just lingering on what you're saying about Calvados there, since for many people, for some people anyway, Calvados will be perhaps the best known apple spirit that they know of. For some people here in England, maybe it's Somerset Cider Brandy. How would you go about sort of summarising the difference between those spirits?
I think we are friendly cousins. We have different apples, we have different soil, different climate. We maybe use barrels in a slightly different way, but we share the same DNA as Calvados, and we're friendly colleagues. And I think we share the same romance. We have the same fundamentalism as Calvados, which is not necessarily seen in some of the other apple spirits. At no point must anything else but apples be added. You have to have cider apples. It has to be a certain amount of cider apples. It's small production. And I think that's really important in the spirit world, that ethos.
Yeah. And what about from a legal point of view? Do you have sort of greater freedoms in terms of production parameters to, say, Calvados, Pays d'Orge, or?
No, we use our stills, we use column stills, and otherwise our rules are very similar. I mean, Julian wrote our rules back in the 80s, and he wrote our rules
We
to
can
follow.
basically do what we like, when we like, how we like. And
But he wrote the rules to follow Calvados's rules,
Yeah.
so that we were on a par with Calvados, and that Calvados could get behind us, which they did, and we could work together. And so we are as restrictive as Calvados in terms of rules for distillate, for barrel use, etc.
And the original still, or even all the stills, are they from Calvados?
they are French stills, yes.
Yes.
From Calvados.
Okay. And you say column, I mean, they're pot stills with a long head on them, right?
They're coffee stills.
stills, yeah.
So they have
Coffee in the terms of, they were designed by Mr. Coffee.
Aeneas coffee, yeah.
And there's coffee, not coffee which you drink in London.
Yeah, sure. But just to emphasise, they're not continuous stills. They are still batch distillation.
they're continuous stills.
They are continuous.
stills.
Okay.
They're continuous stills, and we start them up in the morning and run till we.
Okay, so you just empty a tank of cider slowly into the base of these stills, and it pumps it over.
We feed it into the top of the stills,
Yeah.
and we usually distill for 12 hours at a time, because
Okay.
that seems a civilized way to do it.
Yeah.
And and then we're all tired and want to go home, but they'll work every day for a couple of months.
And then it's just one sort of single distillation in these stills. What sort of strength does that spirit come off at?
70.
Okay. So it's not high strength like you might get in some continuous distillation setups where you're up to sort of in the 90s. This is still pretty.
It's 70%, because if you start going above 70%, you lose all your fruit, and at which point there's no point in using apples.
Sure.
So 70% seems to be the sweet spot
Yeah.
for us and cider.
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes continuous distillation coffee stills some people find it synonymous with high strength, near neutral spirit. And it's interesting, as some of the rum producers I've interviewed in Barbados, Richard Seal at Foursquare, he particularly enjoys using his coffee still, and he doesn't distill up to crazy high strengths. It's still maintaining, it's not as low as 70, but he's still maintaining a lot of the character of the base material, the rum, all the molasses fermentation. And I just think it's important to kind of note that you can use continuous distillation like you're using and still actually end up with a characterful product at the other side of it.
Yeah.
Because it's a complete waste of time if you're just stripping all the flavour.
Most column stills will be seen as part of the alcohol and gin producing product stuff. Undoubtedly, these stills aren't that.
Yeah.
But when we started, we were still using a company which was started by Andreas Coffey, and it's now died to death. But it's not quite though they look like fractionating columns. They're not. They're exactly the opposite. But if you were making gin, you would need to go to 96%.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say they're sort of associated with neutral spirit vodka production, that kind of thing. Stripping out flavour. Yeah.
Yeah, our stills we use the same type of stills as half of the Calvados industry use, and also Armagnac uses our type of still, which is obviously prize for the fruitiness. So
Yeah.
I'm sure if someone's using a pot still, they'll argue the opposite. But
Yeah, no, I think versatility is probably the key thing to note with coffee stills, is that you can set up a coffee still to operate kind of like a pot still, but with a continuous flow of fermented liquid.
I think that describes actually how our pot still, our coffee stills operate like a pot still, but continuously. You could argue it on each, that it distills each batch 9 times as it goes up the column.
Yes, because you've got 9 plates.
Yeah, we're not taking off one fraction.
No.
It is, but as I say, I told you earlier, the customs can't understand how we work.
It's just probably for the best.
And it took us a long time to understand how they work. We understood how they were worked by people who knew what they were doing, but actually how they work is a bit more complicated.
Well, I expect you're getting the hang of it now.
Well, we'll come to that when we taste them all. Let's taste them 10 years old.
Yep, sure. So while we pull that out, I guess we've just started with the eau de vie, which is always an interesting starting point, I think, because you're kind of capturing the essence of the cider. There's no barrel component to it. It really is just the kind of distilled essence of that product. As a cider maker and as a cider brandy maker and a eau de vie makers, how do you sort of resolve what can be captured from cider and taken over to the spirit, and what gets left behind, what gets lost and what gets concentrated, I guess is the question.
Well, it's not, the eau de vie doesn't taste that aptly. Did you pick up apples?
I pick up a perfume that is present within apple juice and within cider, but it's not the entire, I guess not the entire sort of spectrum of flavour that you get from an apple, no. I mean, for stars, we're obviously missing acidity and sweetness there, aren't we, you know?
Yes,
Thank
but
you.
The eau de vie it develops into something else.
I mean, also, I guess there's a question there about what the barrel does, because in some ways, I feel like with 10 years in a barrel, this actually is closer to cider than the eau de vie is.
Yes.
Even though the wood is clearly not made out of apples. So
we have our various expressions. So the eau de vie is a pure, crisp, very perfumed floral spirit. People love it in cocktails. That's its, in the UK market, that's its place. Then we have the 3-year-old, which has got just an edge of barrel, which is a little bit sweeter, a little bit softer, really appley, because that sweetness from the barrel has just brought out that element of apple that you pick up more. And then the 5-year-old, we blend for, we age in quite neutral barrels, and we end up with something that's soft and very delicate. And then the 10-year-old, which you're tasting now, has been aged in ex-sherry casks, and so it's much spicier, and it is much more complex.
So that's interesting. So you know, when you put the eau de vie into barrels, what it's going to be coming out as. So, for example, you put it into sherry casks, knowing that this in 10 years' time, this is going to be 10-year-old.
Yes, it sort of works like that. You have a sort of a basic barrel recipe, but in reality, because we're only a small company, we taste every barrel along the way, maybe multiple times, and we will be tasting for. We'll be looking for certain things for the 10-year-old, certain things for the 5-year-old. And as we're tasting a barrel, we might say this actually tastes more like a 10-year-old. Let's leave
Send
it
in that direction. Yeah,
send it in that direction, or it needs to move barrel and become this. And so, or we might taste a 10-year-old barrel and say, this is the perfect profile for a 5-year-old, and it goes into the 5-year-old
Sure.
So it's we're quite lucky in a way with the fact that each barrel is judged and can
independently of one another,
yeah.
and can then be sent in one direction or another, schooled into a kind of I get you. But it's interesting with the 10, and like you say, now you mentioned sherry casks. That's where some of that fruit's coming from, and it's kind of bringing back that apple characteristic. I just think it's kind of
Taste the 5-year-old.
I think it's kind of miraculous how you can take a spirit like an eau de vie and it will have some apple characteristic, but then after time spent in wood, more of that comes back again,
Yeah.
you know, and it's almost like returning it to what it was originally.
I think you'll see that. We're going to taste the 20-year-old in a minute, and the 20-year-old is remarkable because those apples in our 20-year-old were actually harvested back in the 1990s, and it is so incredibly fruity.
So this is the 5 years old. Yes.
Yeah.
We had gone the wrong way in a way, but
You'll see it's instantly sort of sweeter, more dainty, more floral.
this is what we would say is the basis of cocktails.
Yeah.
And I think 10 years old is our flagship.
Yeah.
And but we have quite a wide market for that aggressively obvious apple, which is lovely.
Yeah, they're two. I think you'll see they're two very, very different profiles.
Yeah, it is.
The 10-year-old's much more macho, and
Although you're tasting it in different glasses, which makes things different as well.
This is true. So I think the 5 is sort of sweeter, slightly more delicate, a little bit more floral characteristic. Whereas the 10, I think it's slightly more broader and fruitier, a little bit more spicy, probably a slightly longer finish as well. It's hard going back and forward, but both delicious. And
that would be our tasting notes. So that's
yeah. Oh, cool. I mean, what's interesting is that they're quite different spirits. I think probably it's due to the way you're managing casks, like you say. It's not like the 10 doesn't just taste like a 5 that's twice as old. It tastes like a different sort of expression altogether of apples, and it's a different spirit as a consequence of that.
I think that's important for us because when we can have a line of barrels. In fact, we have 2 Somerset oak barrels just behind you, and they're the first ever Somerset oak barrels that we know about. We found a tree, we got it, quarter sawn, and
Where were they coopered?
they were actually the first 2 were coopered in Jerez because there was no freelance coopers in the country that could do it.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And then the second oak tree we found that was coming out anyway, we got coopered in Yorkshire, and and then the most recent oak tree, which was 450 years old and right from our hill, and we were so delighted and pleased with ourselves about it. Anyway, we've just had it sawn up and it's no good for barrels, so
No.
that'll be repairing our cider house. But these 2 barrels that we had from the same oak tree, they had the same spirit go into them on the same day, and they taste completely different. So it's just the nuance of the bits of oak from the same tree.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we hear a lot that each barrel is unique, and of course it's a natural product.
Yeah.
But to hear even the same
also
tree.
The same tree, and we're finding that. So we're really learning now when we've got another 7 barrels from Somerset oak that are aging, and we know which trees they've come from as well. So it's we're learning all sorts about the nuances of oak.
And
from
we've planted
trees.
oak trees which will come to fruition in 130 years' time.
Yeah, you're playing a very long game there with.
Playing a great pretension. Yeah.
That's great grandchildren stuff, right? So I'm interested in the barrels. Because that's remarkable. You're going to have a fully Somerset product, if you like.
Yeah.
They're virgin casks, unseasoned.
Virgin casks,
Yeah,
yeah.
and toasted.
Medium toasted. These first ones were medium toasted, and it was.
That's amazing. So how old is the spirit in there?
5 years old.
Okay.
but the first fill we bottled at we put it in barrel during COVID crisis, and so we've just bottled one barrel, and it's unusual. It's got sort of tropical notes in it, but it is it's almost too much wood. It's a great expression of Somerset, but the second fill, we've got great hopes for the second fill, because it'll always be better.
And the rest of your barrels here, you obviously mentioned sherry barrels. Are the rest of them seasoned before use, or are you using a lot of virgin casks here?
We use virgin casks for some things, for our shipwreck cider brandy, that we have virgin casks. Julian first got them off a shipwreck in 2007, and so we now go back to the same cooper and get the same cask from the Allier forest. And then otherwise we've got a bit of a mix. That behind me, they are actually port casks, which haven't been as successful as we'd hoped.
You'd think, right? Sort of red fruits overlaying apples.
Well, we actually had some. Julian had some port that he'd got from somewhere, however many years ago, and it had been sitting in this bond for 20 years, and we kept going back to it and thinking, oh God, what's this barrel in the way? And we were tasting it, and it wasn't anything special, and then tasting it maybe another 10 years later, and we tasted it a couple of years ago, and it was so delicious that it'd been sitting in here for 20 years, aging quietly. So we emptied it out. We put some cider brandy in it, and a 10-year-old cider brandy. And after a year, this brandy we bottled as a single cask.
We bottled it for Christmas this year,
but
we didn't get round to selling it.
Yeah.
And so it has been bypassed, but the pressure this year was an extraordinary year for apples.
We were too busy working.
Every day between the beginning of October and Christmas, we were harvesting apples, where we should have been putting port onto the market. And so those barrels you see down there were port, and we'll get them back. We'll bottle them in time for next Christmas.
Okay.
Well, the one that we barreled was the port barrel that we'd had in here for 20 years. So we then filled these ones, but they haven't progressed yet. So we're going to leave them in there for another 5 years or so. Think about it.
Nice. Oh, that sounds interesting.
But otherwise, we've got sherry casks. We've got lots of reconditioned casks. We use our Somerset Pomona to condition casks. It actually does 3 cycles in cask for its own profile.
Let's taste Alchemy, because that gets ignored nowadays.
Oh yeah, we're talking about that.
Alchemy is matured in sherry PX barrels.
Okay.
PX is unpronounceable to start with, and it is unctuously sherry.
Yes. Very raisiny. Yeah.
And this is exactly the opposite of what you'd expect it to taste like.
You can smell it straight away.
Yeah. And you can see it in the colour as well, right? I mean, that's yeah.
And the effect is almost exactly the opposite. And so it is actually something that in our line of products we ignore largely at the moment.
That's delicious. It's really good. No age statement on that one.
15 years.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
That's really tasty. And quite a nice bridge between, say, a PX sherry, which is so sweet, right? And a spirit.
Yes.
Yeah.
This sort of commercializes the stuff that went into it originally.
So when we're doing our tastings, we'll always say, well, this actually tastes like it's going to be it could be a great 15-year-old, and then at that point we'll move it into a PX cask.
Because PX casks in whiskey making, I think they're often derogated these days because they tend to basically cover up the whiskey. It sort of consumes the bottle. You know, you end up tasting PX and not a lot else. And I think with a careful hand they can work really well, but it's like very short finishing period. You know, just a little light kind of seasoning of PX. But actually, I think with apples, there's much more sympathy there between the two ingredients in the first place. You're not trying to mix grapes and grain, you're mixing grapes and apples. You know, there's a fruit symbiosis. Like it just sort of works. And although the PX is quite present there in that, it's the synergy there with the apple, and that's really nice.
If you were thinking about a present for father-in-law for Christmas, this would meet.
Yeah, would meet the
spot.
requirements. Yeah.
It might not fit into a whiskey buff's idea or it's too sherried, but it sort of professionalizes a 5-year-old, and in a very pleasant sort of way.
Yeah, I really like it. Really like it. I've not had it before.
It's not really one of our core range, but it's when people like it, they really.
Well, so the spirit comes off the still at 70. What strength does it go into the barrels at?
70.
It goes in at 70. Okay. And what do you don't get a huge amount of evaporative losses?
We do after 10 years. It's coming out in the early 60s.
Okay.
And we bottle at 42.
42. Everything at 42.
The shipwreck is bottled at 43. Olivier's.
I was yapping on about it one day, and a story came up which I think I repeat now constantly. There's a book that was published and read by virtually all of our cider customers. It had 3 volumes. And at the beginning of the first volume, they asked the computer about the meaning of life. And the computer comes up with the answer 42.
Oh, yeah.
At the end of the 3rd volume.
Hitchhiker's
Guide to the Galaxy, yeah.
What is amazing is how many people have read the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and the 42 can stay as 42 because of that.
Right, so that's why.
That's why it's there.
It's as good a reason as any. I mean, it's the meaning of life,
We
after all.
spent many a time tasting different strengths and saying, shall we keep it at 42? And the answer is, we should be the product should be between 40 and 43, and we'll stay at 42.
It's a good strength. I think 40 always seems like kind of missing something there. So anything above 40 is always good for me.
I think when we're tasting, we always taste that's cask strength, which means we're all absolutely pissed by.
Yeah.
By
Means you crawl out of here.
Yeah.
we call out and then we
Dragging
we have to start again when we have to do the whole week, sort of narrow it down and start again and do the ones that anyway.
In my case, the wife says things and, what the hell are you doing?
But it's fun, right?
Yeah, let's taste the 20.
Okay, let's do it.
Just pour it on the barrel.
Yeah. You might reclaim a little bit of the angel's share there, right? Just by osmosis through the wood.
This is our choice of.
Look at the colour of that. So for anyone listening and not watching, that's even darker than the Alchemy, I think, with the PX cask. That is so dark.
So I can tell you that these apples were largely harvested in the early 90s, and that's because we when I started, Julian thought there was a few barrels of 20-year-old hanging around that had been untouched, but when we went to find them, they'd obviously been used, and so we had a 6-year gap where we had no barrels of 20-year-old coming through.
It's amazing, and the aroma is, as I was saying before about how...
So this is my joy.
Yes.
And the first thing I would say is we've kept the apple is still there.
It's really there. Like, it's amazing. In fact, it's possibly more there than it was at, say, the 5-year-old. You know, it's just incredible.
And we do a collaboration with Glenfiddich, and they use some of our barrels. And the only thing that hangs over is that there's the touch of apple has gone into the Glenfiddich, which is an incredibly joyous part of our relationship. So we had a love affair with.
Well, I was saying to you before, I've tried the Orchard edition once or twice. I think back when it first came out about 5 years ago, and it's one of the best Glenfiddich bottlings of their sort of experimental releases that I've tried.
But that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I know. Well, it really is. Like, so, don't get me wrong, I love Glenfiddich. It's a great brand, and I've got many friends who work at William Grant. Some of the experimental releases are better than others. Let's put it that way. Yours is the best, I would say, or one
Well,
of
we had
Wow.
a 5-year love affair with them, and this very amicable ending, I think, because they've gone off to cognac now.
Yeah.
Um,
I think at the price point that they sell it at as well, it's
but
really,
if I do a tour of people, I always point out that we had a very beneficial relationship. 5 years is about any love affair lasting, and
They were really amazing
I
to work
point out to the women that 5 years, and they all agree that 5 years is quite long.
well, yeah, long enough. Yeah, with
So
one
we had
partner.
our love affair with Glenfiddich for 5 years.
But they have
A
that
fling.
They a fling, but they've been continued to be really supportive and help us source barrels, and they were actually great to work with. But when we first had they first sent us the whiskey, and it for me, I love whiskey, and there was this mix, this appley whiskey that I couldn't understand on my first taste, and then I took a bottle home, and our ops manager here, who's works alongside us on everything, he took a bottle home, and we sort of touched base about 2 weeks later, and both realised we'd drunk all of it, and realised that it must be really excellent, and it is something that we always have at home now,
Yeah.
and it grows and grows on me.
Well, I mean, apple is a note that pops up in quite a few malt whiskies. You get orchard fruits that comes through from the fermentation. So I think cider brandy casks make perfect sense to sort of augment that, and sort of create a more stylized whiskey expression using some of those casks.
When I went up to Glenfiddich, it was really confusing because it smells of apples and pears.
Yeah.
All the fermenters are kicking out, all coming through all the fans as apples and pears, and it was like being on the farmyard. And I hadn't realised that that's obviously their
Yes,
their
that's
USP
sort of house style, yeah. Them and a few others, but yeah, so those fermentation esters that pop up,
Yeah.
which is kind of crazy because there's no apples, it's just cereal.
So what they went into is the Somerset Pomona casks, which
So in my mind, they're 20 years old.
It's amazing. It reminds me, so some ciders, you get that aroma and that taste where it's almost like you're scratching away at the skin of an apple, and it's slight sort of tannic, but fruity, slightly dry. And that's what I got off the aroma on this. And then you taste it and some of the barrels coming through, but there's so much fruit as well.
I found myself when I was doing a tour down here. I'm waiting for the glass of 20 years old that I'm passing around, and I'll take one of those and drink it.
Yes.
And that actually at 11 o'clock in the morning is quite enough without actually causing me to be the consequences of drinking obvious to some people. But Pomona is that, and
So Pomona is, how's that made? What's the...
So Pomona is Pomona's 20-year-old Julian's hero product. Pomona is mine, I think. Pomona is made with a young Somerset Cider Brandy that gets blended with a juice that's we're the main growers of, and it goes back into cask, and it goes into cask for between 6 and 10 years, and it will move casks 3 times, and then after it's moved cask and been in cask for another 10 or so years, it has a really amazing nuttiness to it. So sits on the table in the same place as a port, amazing with cheese, but it's a long make and it's really accessible. It's only 20%, and I think in the current climate, it's a really great drink.
Yeah.
and the barrels that make the Pomona go off to Glenfiddich.
To Glenfiddich, yeah.
Yeah, so when we'd finished with the barrels, they were going to Glenfiddich. But now we'll be using them for our own cider brandy.
If you've got a mother-in-law, this is the perfect thing for her for Christmas.
I love this. We're getting a full shopping list for the family here. I've got father-in-law, mother-in-law. Just need to sort out the children. I don't imagine that's going to be anything age appropriate here. Have we?
Wife and future wife and future wife.
Wife and future wife. Yeah.
But
Beautiful label on the Pomona as well. Yeah.
It's actually a painting called Pomona by Edward Burne-Jones.
Yeah.
Is this a 20 years old?
Oh,
This is the Pomona.
it's good.
That was the 20.
And that's a great cocktail ingredient.
It's a great cocktail ingredient, great for all sorts, highballs and sours.
Yeah. Aperitif, sort of fizzes, spritzes, that kind of thing. Yeah.
But it's a really long make, that one, and I think it's not something we've really probably sung about enough, but it's such an incredibly versatile product.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it sits somewhere in the kind of port territory, or Madeira. What's the best-selling stuff?
Our best sellers are
10 years old.
10-year-old.
they are 3-year-old, 10-year-old, Kingston Black, and Pomona. So the Kingston Black, are you familiar with the Kingston Black?
Yes,
So the Kingston Black's similar to
which
the
is an
Somerset.
apple variety, right?
Yeah. So it's similar to the Pomona, but it's not been aged for 10 years in barrels. It's a mistel that's been sort of blended and married together, but it hasn't had that extra age. So it's lighter and crisper, and really great as an aperitif. It doesn't have quite the gravitas of the Pomona, but should we taste it?
Yeah, sure. I'm not going to tip away my 20, though, so I'm going to have to tip away
Tip away your
the
Pomona.
Pomona, yeah. Thank you.
So these two sort of top and tail a meal.
A little bit fresher.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's more like sort of soda water or keep it light, sort of long, refreshing drink. Maybe a little bit of lemon. Whereas the Pomona, I'd be more inclined to, I don't know, maybe just serve it on ice. Like you just stir down a little bit of ice, chilled. Yeah, like you say, less weight, but with that comes freshness.
Yeah, we love it. That floral note is specifically from that.
When you
apple.
taste the range of things you've tasted so far, it is utter amazement, really, that the cider brandy distilling story hasn't arrived at a normal part of our cider world.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because it's a bananas investment in time and money. If there's not a distilling industry present, then you're fighting against the current. I think it's changing now.
I think we very much, as a society, addicted to things that come from abroad. But the problem is our aristocracy came from abroad. So in Somerset you have families that make money, they become French, or in the past. And that's something that goes through us when we have a German aristocracy, a German royal family, and the French aristocracy. And within limits, that still defines what we are. When Mr. Farage finishes and becomes Prime Minister, he will become French, because that's what his sort do. His name is French anyway. All he needs to put is a dough in front of it. But we are a very, very complicated nation, and we need to encourage people to take pride in the countryside that we've got. And certainly this part of the world, we have plenty to be really proud of.
Yeah.
We're covered in water at the moment. There's floods everywhere. But there's a whole range of things that it's a joy to be part of Somerset. And cider brandy is part of that. And but we're still obsessed with other things.
Can I just in case it came across otherwise, Julian is absolutely opposed to Nigel Farage and Reform, who are the most odious
I think it
and
came across
toxic.
exactly that
okay,
way.
I
So,
thought it may have
yeah,
come
yeah.
across
I
the
think
opposite way. I'm
certainly, it
just
came
checking.
across that way to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just double checking it's not there. Okay, good.
I think you're raising an interesting point about Britain, England, and how in the current climate it's become kind of cool, fashionable to reject British things because of a sort of, I guess, a kind of guilt of perhaps days that have long gone, colonial past, all this kind of thing. And it certainly is something that I think the spirits industry is wrestling with at the moment, is how do we resolve the amazing things that have come as a consequence of the British Empire and of, traditional British values with all the bad things that came as a result of that as well.
Somerset's a peculiar county because we don't have an aristocracy. So Queen Victoria came to Somerset once. She required the curtains to be drawn in the train because we're a bunch of lefties apparently. But anyway,
Was that for the protection of the lefties or for her? The curtains
I
needed
think
to be
it
drawn.
was protection of the left. So we don't have an aristocracy, and that actually makes Somerset. We are. My great-great-great-grandfather was a man who built a house at the end of the village, and allegedly he wanted to build it up on a sort of platform to keep out the floods. And his neighbours said, "You can't build a house to look down on us." So he built a house that didn't look down on his neighbours, and he got flooded every year. And
That'll teach you.
at the moment, the floods are close to coming in the front door, but it's about a foot away now. And but if it wasn't for the Methodist tradition of not wishing to look down on your neighbours, and egalitarian part of the religion which is gone now largely, he would have built a house which was safe from floods. So that's essentially a red herring.
Our specific area that he's talking about, this Somerset levels, we're really unusual in the whole country in the fact that we're all small holdings. Our farm at 250 acres is a relatively big farm, whereas I was in Norfolk last week and there was an estate of 250,000 acres. And if you go 10 miles that way, the estates will be 6,000 acres. So we're still in an area that is lots of small holdings.
So in a way, it's Somerset. I was talking about River Antoine Distillery, wasn't I, Grenada, before we started, about how it's a lot lost in time. It's not changed. I guess you could say that about Somerset. It's not succumbed to sort of consolidation. It's remained smallholders like it would have been perhaps more broadly across the rest of England in the past.
Yeah, this area of Somerset.
This area of Somerset, yeah. So you're the last kind of bastion of that kind of smallholding tradition.
And the cider industry is the crown jewels of our culture.
Of course.
And people actually think that.
We think it.
We're in good.
These people.
These people. We think it. Other people think
How's the relationship with Herefordshire? Because obviously Herefordshire is a big cider making tradition as well.
I do point out that Somerset is the centre, that the industrial centre has moved north. And on the whole, cider makers in Somerset are indigenous hillbillies. Hereford, on the whole, cider makers are city hillbilly, the City of London hillbillies. But we have a common purpose. But Somerset is something that they aspire to.
Julian's got a great trick he plays on the Hereford cider makers. He praises their orchards, says what beautiful orchards you've have, and then he tells them, he says, it's a shame your apples taste like shit. and it gets them.
They don't mind actually. They don't have that sort of
It-
in-bed pride in what they produce. They say they never sort of come up to me and suggest I withdraw that comment a bit quickly. But their apples, on the whole, when they plant orchards, they plant 100 acres as an investment, which 100 acres in Somerset is a huge
Yes.
orchard.
Yeah.
But it is city money, and they have a different social culture. For them, what matters as far as the farm is concerned is how many pheasants you can shoot. And they can't help it, but they are part of
Different part of the industry, is what you're saying.
different parts of the world, the social spectrum.
But we've had there's a great crisis in the cider industry, and that is that we have lost a huge amount of orchards in the last 10 years. We're losing somewhere around 3% of orchards every single year at the moment, and that's a little bit up, I believe, this year.
Why?
And because the industry has been, the big makers have been using concentrate from abroad as a cheaper labour cost. So they've been buying in tankers of concentrate, and therefore requiring that their growers' orchards are cut down. And so there was 300-acre orchard lost in Hereford last year, and so to lose 3% of our orchards every year is wild, and that's hit Hereford harder, I believe. And
Because they're bigger producers, more industrial scale, and
Yeah.
so the economics of importing apple
Yeah.
concentrate is more applicable to them.
but I hope the tide is turning.
Yeah.
I have a feeling the tide is turning, and maybe that's partly because our economy is so on the slide that that suddenly it's might be economic to actually use UK apples.
Matilda's chairman of the local committee of West Country cider makers. So she
What
has.
you after?
That's fine.
I'll take some more of that as well, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, you are. So you were telling me before we started recording, you are chair. Is it West Country?
Southwest.
Southwest
Yeah.
cider makers. So how many different cider makers is that?
Oh, there's loads in the southwest, but I think at the moment we're 72, with some more joining in the next few weeks.
So it is
but-
most likely the biggest West Country cider organisation in the country. Hereford has a few, Wales has a few, Norfolk has a few, but in Somerset it is part of the real world.
What's the objective of the organisation?
It's to be a community. We're sharing information, and then we sit on the National Association of Cider Makers, which we wouldn't be. Many of us wouldn't be big enough to sit on that alone. So
Yes.
it's just a club for sharing information and
And
very, very lobbying and very important. It's-
lobbying government as well.
Yeah.
I mean, with Rachel Reeves wishing to tax everything that moves,
We-
with half a dozen taxes come off on, since she said she was reducing these things. And
Yeah, uncharacteristically, she lied, right?
Yeah, the legislative changes.
no, I think
That
she's a
we're-
bit thick.
Okay, it's not even a lie, just a bit stupid.
But the changes that we're facing at the moment with the taxes, we've had successive teetotal chancellors that have done some quite arbitrary taxes, and the feeling is the government's a little bit against any of the alcohol industry. So there's
Never trust a teetotal politician. Eh?
there's challenges.
Trump's
there's lots of
teetotal as
challenges.
well, allegedly.
Is
Yeah.
he?
Yeah. So there's that. There's Ozempic. People aren't drinking.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, there's moderation. There's the cost of going out and drinking, of course, is a massive one. It is just price prohibitive. I mean, when we talk about Gen Z not drinking so much, yeah, it's a trend amongst the culture of young people for various reasons. They're spending more time in front of a screen and connecting online, but also it's just expensive to go out and drink, right? Even if you're buying cheap drinks, it's expensive to go out and
Drugs
drink.
are pretty good.
And drugs are pretty good, and drugs are cheaper. So, if I say drugs are pretty good, probably edit that out. Maybe edit that out, both of us. But no, there's alternatives.
Just lost half your audience.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. The audience are probably fine with that. It's just, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot. There's, premium, small spirits producers like yourselves. It's a hard graft in the current climate. I mean, I think probably actually, in some ways, you have an advantage over a bigger brand, in that you can be dynamic, you can try new things. You're family owned, and so you're only accountable to yourselves, and you hold. I mean, especially with what you're doing here, you hold a very specific niche in the market as well, and so there's always that opportunity to trade off of the desire for something that is of extremely high provenance and quality and heritage. Whereas if you are a sort of semi-faceless brand owned by a larger company and you're trying to enter that market or establish yourself or maintain a position in that market right now, and you don't have that same level of credibility and authenticity, you're going to struggle. We were talking a little bit earlier about the fact that you're a very English, very Somerset product. And we've just sort of seen very recently, and we were talking earlier, Matilda, about gin and the sort of renaissance that gin experienced, partly off the back of cocktail culture, I think. Gin was kind of the de facto mixing spirit in the early 20th century. And as bartending and cocktails and everything kind of had its own revolution, gin followed suit. And we ended up with a situation where everyone was obsessed with gin, and it was, how do you mix your gin and tonic? What garnish do you use? What's your tonic water? What's your gin? And that's still going on to a large extent, although clearly that trend is plateaued, if not dropped off a little bit. Yeah. But it's kind of remarkable because gin was this sort of distinctly English stroke British drink. And we found a sort of newfound love for it that didn't exist in the 90s, just was not there. I'm just wondering whether you think that there's an opportunity there for cider brandy in England, and not just yourselves, although at the moment it kind of is just yourselves, but can you see a future where we start to see more cider brandy producers in Hereford, in Somerset, in Cornwall maybe, and wherever, and what could happen to this category in the next 10, 20 years?
It's a good question, and I think the gin boom is... There's a lot of people. It's very easy to make a gin. You can do it within a week. Whereas brandy, you're in it for the long run. And so they're always talking about this year's going to be the year for brandy, or this year's going to be the year for rum. But it's the market can't evolve, and the people with the marketing spend can't roll with that. So
there's a lot of speculation needs to happen to start something like this.
Yeah. So. Brandy, is it going to be a bigger category? Yes, we're on the precipice of something in this industry, and there is suddenly contract distillers that are making, and they're making for people. They're making not in a very good quality. I went to a talk, and I was talking about to the cider industry about distilling, and the other person was selling contract distilling, and they said, don't worry if your cider's got sulfates. I can add hydrogen peroxide to it to get them out. Don't worry about if your cider's half vinegar. It won't come through in the distillate. It will. But don't worry about if your cider's bad. I'm just turning a waste product into something you can sell. So it's basically, give me your rubbish and I'll turn it into a product for you, which is the antithesis of what we do. And so I was standing up to those cider makers. I was saying, if you do it, make it good, do it properly, and we could be a good industry. We could stand up like the Calvados or the Armagnac or the cognac industry, but cut your corners, make a bad job of it, and we all fail.
Yeah.
And I never got tabled again. But we do some contract distilling for people, because it's really important that people understand that you don't give your waste products to distilling, because you might as well buy a neutral grain spirit. It's going to cost you a tenth of the price, and you're going to be having something better. So we've got a bit of an identity crisis, because everyone is the cider industry is in crisis. It has been on the slide for the last 12 years. And so people are looking at what else they can do with their apples. And it would be really wonderful to think that makers could join us and follow our production manual, essentially, and make something great. But if they
Start
cut the
cutting
corners and make something terrible, it's
a double-edged sword, isn't it?
disaster.
I mean, on the one hand, more producers producing great quality spirits will help to elevate the category.
Yes.
It's not a competitive marketplace as such at that point in the early stages of a category. But as you say, if you have bad actors who want to cut corners and produce something that says cider brandy on the bottle, but is effectively a trash bin for waste products that they didn't have another way of selling, then that's bad for everyone, right?
It's a bit like the Applejack industry. You'll go across the whole world and you'll see Calvados on the menu, but you won't rarely see an Applejack on the menu.
Yeah, let's talk about Applejack. So
I don't know enough about Applejack to give you a definitive.
So Julian, what's your take on Applejack?
If it's just American, is Applejack frozen?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
Originally.
Yeah.
But we make ice cider.
Yeah.
But Applejack, if it's an alcoholic drink, it's a pre. I don't think I can have anything polite to say about it whatsoever.
I think that's my fear. Is the cider brandy industry in America had its identity crisis. They use neutral grain and all sorts of things that would just never be allowed by us or by Calvados or by anyone on the continent. And that is my big fear for the UK industry, that you have bad actors just trying to turn a quick profit and then not in it for the long term.
My son went for a DNA test, and he found out that he was 2% Vietnamese. But
It sounds like the start of a joke.
What? But our nearest living relatives in America, living in the north of New York State, were apple distillers.
Oh, no way.
And
That share a great grandfather.
No way.
and that was great grandfather.
Wow, there's apple in the DNA.
Grandfather, they had come from this village. Their forefathers had come from this village, gone to the States, and then set up apple distilling, which he found through the DNA testing.
So we have a relationship with people in the States, but we haven't researched.
There must be some good producers of apple brandy.
There's certainly some good producers for sure, but I don't think I think maybe the category doesn't have the kudos because.
Sure. Although your
because
product,
you have an identity
your brand
crisis.
is known. I know. But I mean, I interview a lot of the most respected bartenders in the world on this podcast, and I think on a couple of occasions, if not on camera and on microphone, but outside of that, your brand has come up for sure. I know it's respected in America for sure.
We used to sell a bit to America, and then Trump's tariffs put paid to it.
Yeah.
It will come back in due course. One thing that has allowed us to do what other people haven't done, is that though we've been cider makers for 50 years, for 50 years we've always ended up each year for a week in the summer at a place called Glastonbury Festival.
Oh yes.
And we've been a constant, besides the first Glastonbury, from the second Glastonbury till now, we've always been there. So in some ways, a pretty good weekend at Glastonbury has helped out finance a bloody great pile of spirit, which is essentially going to be for sale here for the next 200 years.
Is that right? Has Glastonbury been a big part of the brand?
Whether you're selling anything you can imagine, it's a big market. 200,000 people arrive in Somerset, desperate to give people money for cider, for anything you could imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you put it like that, it's kind of a cider festival as much as a music
So we
festival.
have
If you think about in here, these barrels represent, there's probably 300 barrels, 10 tons of apples per barrel. It's 3,000 tons of apples that we've had to put aside and put in these barrels.
we took our Matilda's youngest baby, which is called Max, about 10 months old,
6 months.
to see the owner of Glastonbury and wish him happy Christmas or something. So he was well impressed by a smiling baby who wasn't.
Is it Michael Evis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't screaming and behaving like you could dream of baby.
Unique amongst babies.
So he offered him a job when he got older, when Michael might not be here. Any time, he said, if he wants a job, there's a job here for him.
It's pretty good at 6 months.
Yeah, I know, right?
Job, isn't it?
That's impressive.
When he's 18, he can go to the organisers and say,
Well, I expect when he's 18, he's going to very much want to go to Glastonbury. So yeah,
but
maybe he'll be working there on a double-decker bus though.
He'll be
but he could do better, and he's been offered a job in management. But that's the way that life works in Somerset.
Yeah. Well, no,
And that's the joy, that if Glastonbury didn't exist in a normal in Somerset, it would exist with Richard Branson coming in by helicopter, collecting all the money. And anyway, it's one of the joys of Somerset. This is what Matilda does quite a lot of, is various liqueurs.
We have an experimental orchard, which is just a bit of fun, really. That we plant things that we knew, plum apricot mixes and that sort of thing. We just plant, and then in 10, 15 years, something might be working, and something may not be working. So we've got different apple varieties, and we just see what's going to work for our climate in the future. Diversity.
Do you bottle anything that doesn't grow here?
No. We grow. That's our USP, if you like. If we don't grow it, we don't make it.
So we have a cherry liqueur, which isn't there. I looked earlier.
So this is the quince liqueur. Actually, we only make we just grow a few things for fun. We grow plums, we grow quinces, we grow cherries, we grow elderflowers, and it's just really experimental. It's finding new markets. So this is quinces macerated with eau de vie. We leave them macerated with their skins for
so
6 months.
it's cider eau de vie, and then you macerate.
It's eau de vie and crushed quinces, and it's left for 6 months with skins and everything, and then we will press it after we think it's ready. This is actually
And it's very popular.
It smells amazing. Quince is just one of my favourite fruits. I've got quite a lot of garden and at home, and we have pear trees, old pear trees that someone planted many years ago with all the little plaques along the garden wall, and quite a lot of Japanese quinces. And when they're ripe, I can't help myself. I pick them and I eat, because they're so sour, right? But the tropical fruit aromas and flavours that come off it, you're soaking wet.
This was last year's, but this year's quinces we've yet to press. It's still macerating. They were so amazing. You could actually eat a quince like an apple this year. That's the first time I've ever
sweetness
seen that.
or less acidity, or
They were just so sweet and so well developed.
That's good. That is so tasty because that captures it.
But great for cocktails. So we just made this for fun because we wanted to plant some quince trees, and actually people love it. It's such a weird flavour that people don't use so much.
Quince is apparently closely related to medlar.
Oh, what? Sorry,
A medlar.
I don't know what that is.
Medlar is like a part of the rose family, and it looks like the centre of a rose but bigger, and you have to let them slightly rot, and then you use them.
But it's a fruit.
Yes, it's and they are.
So is it something like a rose hip?
Sort of. Let me see. No, I'll find you a picture of a medlar in a bit. Anyway, we made some medlar liqueur, and it was too. It wasn't quite right.
That's absolutely delicious. It's so good.
It is, isn't it?
It's so good.
But people, we didn't really think this would.
10, 20 years old.
I've got the 20 there. Yeah.
It burns. It gets through the 20 years old, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. But it's the sweetness and acidity together that make it so tasty.
And that apple kind of backbone.
And that's the basis of making cider.
So we just do
The
these.
acidity and the sweetness make cider.
But this is a really great cocktail ingredient, and actually, we always sell out of the quince. Which is, the quinces are suffering a bit like pears. They're suffering from something called quince blight.
Oh.
Although this year,
Not mine. I mean, you mentioned
year
already it
looks
was a
amazing.
good year for fruit. My garden was full of fruit this year as well. I had lots of pears and lots of quinces, but I just turned it into quince paste, quince cheese, or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And I've not eaten enough cheese to be able to get through all of the quince paste that I have.
Yeah, Julian's fridge is absolutely full of Membrio.
Membrio, that's it. Yeah, Membrio. Yeah. What
Well,
do
they
you
get turned into liqueur.
Oh, this is it. Now I know. You can. So how do you? What's the process of turning that into liqueur? How do you macerate that in there and get it out?
Well, you have to grate your quinces.
Right.
That's the hard bit.
That
You'll
sounds like
know-
a euphemism for
you'll
something. You've
know
got to
how
grate your
hard,
quinces.
you'll-
Quinces are like
yeah.
they're like wood, aren't
They're
they?
like
They're
rock,
so hard. Yeah.
And that's the process.
That's
you
the
macerate
process,
it in your
right.
spirit,
And then
a
just
dash
filter it
of,
back
dash
out.
of sugar. Then you press it 6 or so months later.
Okay.
But quinces are crazily expensive. They are. A quince this year on the market wholesale was £4,500 a ton, versus an apple at £100 a ton. A cider apple at £100 a ton.
Wow. But I mean, presumably there are people that are commercially growing. Well, you're commercially growing quinces, I guess, right? Yeah. On a small
Well-
scale. Yeah. That's crazy. We've kind of dipped in and out of this whole kind of like craft spirits movement of the last, well, if we're to include you in there, the last 40 years, let's say. And we should definitely include you because you are the first, albeit the only, for roughly 20 years. I mean, what does that word mean to you now? Because it's been bashed around, it's been abused, it's been used in various different contexts that don't
The
mean what
craft.
it actually is. Yeah. So what does it mean to you now?
I think we were oblivious to it because it's a new term that a craft distillery. There was no craft distilleries. We were a distillery in Somerset making something. So the whole craft distillery movement, I don't know. I've never really felt like we were part of it because it came so much later.
Yeah.
And then you've suddenly got all these new craft distilleries, and we were a forerunner of it, but it's not. It only really occurred to me recently that we were also a craft distillery. It was.
You're definitely a craft distillery. If we want to take the term as its proper, useful meaning. But I think because it's been co-opted by a different movement, some of which is valid. There are other small farm distilleries that have been set up that are doing things in what I would class as a craft way, but there are also other small distilleries that, just because they're small, they consider themselves to be craft, and yet, as you've said, they're buying in spirit from abroad and they're just macerating it or redistilling it in a pretty simplistic way.
Or mixing it with brown sugar and calling it rum.
Yeah, or doing that. But you know, as we've said, you know, you operated for so long as a small independent family-owned distillery, the only, that I think I'm not surprised you were kind of oblivious to it, because you sort of you did sit outside of that movement for so long. The movement came along. In many ways, it's sort of dying, I think. You know, a lot of these small producers that were around 10 years ago are no longer producing. We're seeing big spirits producers, big distilleries that are shuttering or mothballing temporarily, if not permanently, as well as small producers. And yet here you still are doing your thing, albeit still on a relatively small scale as compared to a big producer, but nevertheless driven and continuing to release new products, continuing to release older expressions as well. The trajectory here is not, it's, right?
I think probably what you're getting at, we're not business minded here, which is why we're doing what we do. And I think we've all been, we're a small team, there's 12 of us, and we do absolutely everything. We grow the apples, we tend the orchards, we have our sheep that mow the orchards, we do the harvest, we do all the make, the bottling, the labelling, everything gets done by hand on this farm. And so we've never had a salesperson in our lives. It's just if someone has stumbled across the farm and met Julian or one of the other members of the team. So we haven't had, we've never been outward looking, which is maybe a mistake. But now in this industry, we're just thinking we have this stock that we have got to sell. A few years ago, we had very little 10-year-old. We were waiting for another 5 years for a 20-year-old barrel. So we very reliant on our older stock, but we didn't have that older stock ready. Now we have it. And so we're suddenly looking and thinking we should actually pay attention to the market. But yeah, I think all of that craft movement has slightly passed us by because we've had our heads down making, and we're not very business minded in some ways.
How is business though?
It's okay. It's okay. We have the same issues as anyone else in the spirit industry, but I think our heritage
as such is that we tick all boxes as far as the organic craze is concerned. Our production of apples is essentially organic. And
we grow organically. We're not certified, but we grow organically.
Yeah.
And I think we're all really proud of how we manage our land.
Not entirely outside the trend at the moment.
I think we're good. We're getting good traction, and we are in a place where we're about to grow. But we've just been it's been a while getting there because when you're selling a 20-year-old and a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old product, and even the Pomona is a 13-year turnaround, you have to be confident that you have those stocks coming through.
Sure.
So I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
Is the answer, I guess.
And I guess that, as we've mentioned already, like being a family-owned business, thinking about the future, you have to think about consistency of production and laying down stocks for the future Pomona and the future 20-year-old and whatever comes after that as well. So there's not an inconsistency of supply going forward.
Yeah.
It's a long game, right?
It's a long game, and my siblings are all now on the board and are all now involved, which is a great joy.
That's amazing.
And so there's 4 of us, and there's a couple of other families that we work with, and there's multiple generations of those families as well. So it's good. We've got a good platform.
Yeah. I mean, as I said to you before in email and before we started recording, I've been using your products for close to 25 years. Back when I first started bartending, and certainly the first bar I managed, I remember we had, I guess it was 5-year-old Kingston Black, maybe it had just come out at that time, or maybe it had been out a little while, I don't know, but it seemed to be new to me, at least. And always struck me at the time as remarkable that we had this distillery, because I was in Cornwall, 100 miles away, that was making English spirits, Somerset spirits, in an authentic manner, and that we could champion, especially when I was at 15 in Cornwall, because 15 was all about local sourcing, and they were trying, there was an Italian restaurant, ostensibly, they were trying to sort of source all of this produce, tomatoes, lettuce, meat, cured meat, all this stuff from in and around Cornwall mostly, and all the meat and everything. But so I sort of took that same philosophy onto the bar, and I was like, well, what can we find locally? And this is before craft beer and everything. She's like, what local breweries can we find? And of course, distilleries, there was none, except for you guys. You were the closest distillery, and so we used your products in a lot of different cocktails and aperitif style drinks. And shamefully, as I said to you, never got a chance to visit.
I think it's amazing. I think that shows where the industry was, right? That Julian has rarely left the farm, that's fair to say. But people found him and what they were doing then because there was no one else doing it. And then we've been sort of consolidating and busy making, and that whole kind of craft movement and the marketing noise has crept up behind us.
Yeah.
And caught us slightly unawares as we're consolidating our stock.
I think as a society we're very susceptible to marketing. We drink it in and we go. Marketing sort of plays on our humanity in many ways. And spirits brands and drinks brands and any sort of fast-moving consumer goods become very adept at marketing to us. But there's something about authenticity that can't be faked. And when you're looking for something authentic, I think if it's inauthentic, we see through it quite easily. And when you're presented with a brand, a product, a family, a distillery that quite clearly is rooted in producing really tasty things, with zero compromise, and actually not chasing a quick buck or even any buck, but rather doing the thing that they feel impassioned and inspired and motivated to do, regardless of whether the business plan works. That is a more discreet and more subtle story that it might pass a lot of people by, but once you become aware of it, once you taste it and experience it, and the weight of that, the gravitas of that story, is the most powerful marketing. And it's not marketing. It's because you're not being marketed at. You are just falling in love with.
Well, we did have a good marketing win. I posted a picture of harvesting. It was the most boring, mundane picture of harvesting ever. I thought, oh my goodness, I haven't posted, and it's just before Christmas, and we need to be posting because it's the selling time. And I posted a picture of harvesting, 101 million views.
Oh wow!
And counting, yeah.
So she went to
about 500,000
recent meeting of the National Association of Cider Makers, which she is invited to as a sort of token. Those people were potting around sort of 10,000 and 30,000 views or whatever they got up to. And she could pop up and say, well, she got 100 million.
100 million.
So
it's really bonkers. The most boring.
And that's on the Somerset Cider Brandy Instagram, is it? Yeah.
It didn't equate to any sales whatsoever, but
no sales.
But it was a great story.
No sales. A lot of visibility.
It was
brand awareness. Brand awareness.
Let's say it was quite international, as opposed. It was if it was 100 million in the lots of people in Iran and Afghanistan and India.
Fantastic. Dry countries,
countries where you won't be finding a bottle of brandy, cider brandy, very fast.
100 million is unbelievable.
That is unbelievable.
Well, when she was 9 million, it was incredible, but every weekend it goes up by 1 million or 2 million.
100 million is nuts.
It's absolutely bonkers. It's that.
What was the content of the video? Maybe we'll put this on a
job applications from all over the world.
Really?
And one
Well,
day I had
some of them unwanted.
3
probably.
from India, 1 from Afghanistan, 1 from Cameroon. That was just one day every.
And one from Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, someone was called Saddam Hussein.
Oh, right, someone actually called
One
Saddam
of them
Hussein.
actually called Saddam Hussein. But there was.
That's unfortunate. No.
Yeah,
But maybe in the
it was
the
a really boring
heavens that
video,
Saddam
but
still exists.
obviously not that boring.
It is what our religion tells us that we should be believing, that his physical death doesn't mean to say he could still be up there.
Wanting to work on the cider farm.
What Saddam Hussein? You think he was reincarnated with the same name?
No, that is a religion we all
Spirit.
it is a religion we all sign up to.
Which one? Saddam Hussein?
What, reincarnation?
Reincarnation?
Which one?
And that he's gone to heaven or hell, wherever he happens to be.
Oh, right.
He can see your the idea is he can see your podcast
Oh, okay.
is not so extreme
No, well, no.
as you might first suggest.
No.
A whole different spirit realm.
Yeah, no. We're still talking about spirits. It's just in a different, the other one. Yeah.
But after goodness knows how many glasses of this,
Yeah.
you can come to that conclusion. But it is an amazing figure.
Yeah.
And at the NACM meeting,
Not reproducible.
they must have been were still scratching their heads and wondering what they do wrong.
I think we're all still scratching our heads. And
Okay, so we've drunk quite a lot of 20-year-old now. When can we expect something older?
well, when can we expect something older? We are, I think, probably happy with our 20-year-old, and older spirits might go. We have a barrel of 20-year-old that I think we will end up topping up. So that 20-year-old actually has apples that that were distilled 30 years ago
Right.
in it. So we'll stick with a 20-year-old for now, but I guess in 10 years we'll
10
have
years, I think we'll have.
10 years. I think we'll probably end up with a 30-year-old, which is not to say we don't have spirit approaching that age now. It's just that we're really happy with that. We'll stick with our 20-year-old expression.
Did you ever imagine you'd be bottling 20 or even 30-year-old spirit?
Not in our wildest dreams. We didn't think of that, which would suggest that we must have been a bit stupid.
When we were kids,
There's many things that have happened in the world which don't survive an inspection of the sensibleness.
That's true.
We were stuck with the dream of distilling, and the dream of distilling is at 10 years old, or 20 years old, or 30 years old, of the produce of the orchards of Somerset. And we're well along that way. It's up to Matilda here to guide it to the finest and the final stage. But I would have thought a 30-year-old cider brandy, fully documented, fully established to its history, is the future for us. We have I will leave Somerset with a new industry. What the next generation do with it is up to them. But everything tells me that it's an industry that we should all take seriously. And the idea of taking a cider orchard seriously and give them romance, that the dream that they are. I think the early Methodists, and we come from a Methodist area, said God's manifestation of heaven and earth was an orchard in the autumn.
have you spent much time?
I'll stick with that.
Have you spent much time in the blossom?
I've done some apple picking down in Cornwall for some of the cider producers.
In a big standard traditional orchard? Okay.
Not a big orchard, small.
Come up for blossom at the very beginning of May and come and spend a day under the blossom. It is so magic. People go to Japan for the cherry blossoms, but they should come to Somerset for.
Well, they produce similar blossom, right? It's cherries that obviously
Yeah,
take
they're
one, but
similar. And it's
We
so
went to
beautiful.
Japan on a government-sponsored cider brandy selling scam at the cherry blossom.
Oh, it was at cherry blossom.
It was pretty unimpressive.
government-sponsored cider scam.
Yeah.
Go on, let's unpack that a little bit then. What?
A trade envoy
Okay.
back. This must be 20 years ago, but there you go. You heard it from the horse's mouth. Who's been to the cherry blossom? Apple blossoms better.
I've seen the cherry blossom in Japan too. The thing is, they have much more sort of almost quasi-religious fervor about it, right?
Yeah, but we should have it here. It is we should
We
have
have
this.
Somerset Day here. Apple blossom time, and it is amazing.
Yeah, you've managed to keep it secret from the rest of the British Isles, I think.
It's the most romantic time. We all work in this rubbish weather and through these miserable muddy months, and we all hold on to that moment, that moment where spring comes and the blossom comes out, and then you could not be anywhere better in the world. It's incredible. So bring your family up.
Okay.
Come up for lunch and hang out in the blossom, because
Consider it a date.
That's a date.
That is a date. That is a date. You're not that far away from
It looks like we managed to breed a decent salesman.
Yeah, I think you've done very well. Yeah. Was that an invitation just to me or everyone listening to the podcast?
Everyone listening to the podcast, why not?
No, but I know what you mean. As I get older, the more I start to appreciate the seasons. I don't know if you found the same, but like you look for you start to recognize the patterns.
Yeah.
When the blossom comes out, you know, we've got magnolias and rhododendrons in our house, and sort of waiting for them to bud and to blossom. I mentioned I've got pear trees as well, and then when the fruit starts to come, and I do a little bit of gardening as well, and there's sort of that kind of rhythm with the seasons. And you guys are farmers, obviously, so you're very cognizant of it. Just becomes such a beautiful dance that you get to have with nature, that you can't control it. It's going to happen whether you're here or not, and you get to become a participant in that dance every single year.
Yeah, and last year's was great. Last year the blossom was wonderful, and then the harvest was amazing, and so we can put up with
a little bit of misery.
Miserable floods outside.
Yeah.
What would you like, Julian?
20 years of alchemy.
What, one of each?
Yeah. Same for you.
Yeah, I've got 20 there. I'll take a bit of alchemy. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, alchemy. Well, I came in with a really bad back, and I can't really feel it.
Yeah, you can't feel it anymore. Yeah. No, it's funny that, isn't it?
Thinking about coming up with an intelligent comment works wonders. Yeah.
How do you think about new product development? I mean, clearly you've got an age statement range here. Let's put that down a little bit. Don't block your face. That's it. Yeah. There's age statements, and we talked a little bit about that. I mean, we've consumed some of the eau de vies and Pomona and Kingston Black. Are you hesitant to sort of introduce a new product, knowing that you might have to sort of stick by this product for a while?
I think we've made so many products. We've got loads of different single cask things that we've just played with. We thought this tastes amazing. This is unusual. Let's bottle it, and we've given it a bit of thought. And we have our core range, and then we have our seasonal range, if you like, which might include things like a quince liqueur or an elderflower liqueur, or things that are ephemeral, and we're always experimenting, and it's there's always things that we want to be doing. We're doing some ready to drink cocktails just because it's fun too, and we're working with some artists,
Cool.
And because it's what we want to be drinking this summer. But we're quite lucky in so far as we have a farm shop, and we have an online shop, and we never have a business plan, so we can do these things without worrying too much.
Yeah.
So yeah, in Easter we'll have 2 ready to drink cocktails and a vermouth. It'll just be for the summer.
Could you phone up the farm and see if you could send somebody down to get a sample of the port?
I don't want to sample this port because I sampled it recently, but I will sample, if you would like to sample a barrel, we can sample one of the young Somerset Oak barrels, which you haven't tasted for a while.
I'd love to try that.
No.
I'd love to try that Somerset Oak, yeah.
Julian, the new Somerset Oak barrels, not the original Somerset Oak cask.
We'll send out to the farm to get a sample.
I can get a sample.
Okay.
We get Danny to send somebody down.
It's half 10.
Is there anywhere that I can go for a quick toilet break?
Outside the door.
We were just talking about Alchemy, which, as we established, is a 15-year-old finished in PX casks.
Finished in PX.
Finished in PX casks. And then we've got 20-year-old as well, and the comparison between them.
You said they were on par.
I said they're roughly on a par. If I was blind tasting,
Hey, Justin.
I've done it, Justin. Thanks.
if I was tasting blind, I would probably put them a similar kind of level. One thing I noticed is that the Alchemy, I think because those PX casks has a little bit of sweetness coming through, which sugar, just a little bit of sugar always elevates fruit, and so that's very nice. And there's only 5 years difference. This is still a very mature product, you know, and the 20 years obviously is 20 years, and that's even older. But you said that, you know, Alchemy's maybe not been the best
You
seller.
always learn something from a tasting with something like you. It could have been anything like you, but you are obviously in this circumstances very special.
Yeah.
But that's my conclusion as well, that the 20 years old is my dream, but the 15 years old
Well, I said to you before, I think.
finished in sherry PX barrels.
Yeah.
It comes very close to, and that is amazing.
Yeah.
And I thank you for that, because I don't often sit down and drink everything that I'm offered like this. And
You're the one doing the offering, I think. You're not offered it.
just to show.
But no, I get what you're saying. And well, I appreciate the compliment.
And for me, it is the purpose of sitting down and tasting with people who taste other things. It's very interesting to see the reaction.
Well, I think actually tasting and talking is the best way to do these kind of things, you know.
And I'm in agreement with that. This is joyous.
Yes. Just one more final thing is, yeah, I wonder if it's just being undersold in a way.
I think it is being undersold. We sell hardly any of it, so I think it's probably...
Must be undersold.
Oh, I think yeah.
Yeah, we don't do samples of that inside the house.
I think when we're tasting things, because we have such a range, we tend to go 5, 10, 20 as our after dinner.
And this
drinks.
gets sort of leapfrogged in a way.
And it gets leapfrogged, and it's slightly, because it's got that sort of sweetness, and perhaps the barrel finish is more obvious than in the rest of the range.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit outside the range. But when people love PX, they really go for it. Although our best seller, we had a guy that used to buy cases of 12 quite regularly, and then he turned up at the farm, and turns out he was drinking them with Coca-Cola.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, whatever floats your boat. I mean, honestly, I don't think love of PX is a necessary requirement. I am somewhat allergic to PX because in whiskey it often means this has been drowned in PX and effectively nullified anything else that was residual in the character of the spirit. That's the usual playbook of PX cask finished whiskies. But in this case, as I said to you originally when I first tasted it, it synergizes with the Aperitif spirit in a way that whiskey cannot, I don't think. And so that's why it works really well. And then that little bit of sweetness, and I think sweetness just elevates the fruit. And yeah, it's good. It's nice.
Good.
All right, cool. So what you've just pulled something out of a cask.
So this is something that we would never bottle, obviously. Well, for one, it's too young. But this is not from a. This is a new make spirit put in a Somerset oak cask for 2 years. So it's 60. My guess is it's still 69%, and so it's a smeller, not a taster.
Don't know which one to.
I
we
will
can taste and smell, but yeah. Okay, so this is.
Please tell me what it is.
It's the Somerset Oak cask, 2-year-old. So it's a new make Somerset Oak cask that was laid down in 2023, and so you're just getting the essence of what it might be.
Yeah.
It's got
the colour of it, considering that amount of time, but it's a virgin cask, right?
It's a virgin cask, but it's got a long way to go. It's
Did you taste those barrels at the end?
No, they're not ready yet.
So this
married.
is quite special because everything in this glass is made in Somerset.
Everything in that glass is made in
The
Somerset.
wood, the apples, fermented, distilled,
Yeah.
and then put in those barrels that are grown in Somerset
Yeah.
as well. How old was the tree? Do you know?
About 132 years old.
So that's a whole different kind of age statement on
It's
this.
a whole different thing. They have to be around that age to be able to have a hope of making a barrel out of them.
It smells of cider and apples, though. Like, I mean, I guess it's youthful still.
It's very youthful and it's quite raw in that format. But can you smell there's sort of almost a pineapple-y, coconutty, tropical notes, which
That's that toast off the barrel.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, to be doing something in local oak is just so unusual in the UK. I guess it does happen in France, obviously, and just a wonderful continuation of what you're doing. And I think it
How
speaks
old
very.
is this?
too.
It's going to be wonderful.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it just speaks so well to your whole philosophy of patience and trying mad things and seeing how it turns out.
I think making barrels out of Somerset oak might be Julian's maddest idea so far, and he's started this process about 10 years ago, and it's just when I'd started, and he said, right, I want to make barrels out of this tree, and he'd come across a tree, and I sort of started costing it out, and it was, by the time you you buy your oak tree in the hope that some of it might make a barrel, then you find your person to quarter saw it, and then you dry it out for 3 years, then you grade it, then you find a cooper at this time in this one is actually in Yorkshire, and then you've had this whole process. It's already been 5 years and you've been trying to make this barrel, and it's cost you. And by the time they get to the cooper and the cooper says it's all rubbish apart from you can make one barrel out of it, and you many thousands of pounds later. And so it's a totally nonsensical thing, but Julian was totally determined, and it's kind of the
Cost
ultimate.
per barrel must have been off the chart.
Well, we haven't costed it in because it's too painful, and you don't. There's certain things that you just don't do. If you look at the bottom line, you just don't do them. So Julian taught me.
That's an interesting point.
Don't look at the bottom line. It's romance trumps all.
That's it. So this is it. Romance trumps all.
Yeah.
Do not look at the bottom line.
Julian's
Within reason, because obviously it needs to be sustainable.
Julian is a hopeless romantic, which is sometimes great, sometimes terrifying.
And especially in the position you're in now, where you have to be the sort of moderator of the
I
romance.
think that most likely sums up the discussion.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Sometimes good, sometimes horrifying.
But Matilda, what's it like for you being the intermediary of the romance versus pragmatism
But
of
she's
the
the
business?
boss nowadays.
Yeah.
What's it like? It is it's a tight wire walk at times, and it's great. I mean, it's an industry that all of us are in because of the joy of the landscape and what we're producing. You're not in it for commercial gain, and that's a really nice place place to be. Luckily, none of us want fast cars and speedboats.
Just a reliable Land Rover.
Oh, not even that. But no, it's a great place to be. It's a juggling act, but it's we're totally wedded to the romance, and we are going great guns on creating this landscape and expanding this landscape, and there's great pride in that. And when you've got kids, that's a amazing thing to be able to nurture for them.
Where's the balance of joy in this endeavor? Is it in seeing people like me appreciate these spirits, or is it more in the being custodians of the land and making something of the land?
Oh, that's a really that's a complicated question. I think
If you answer the second part in a positive way, that would suggest that you're a food artist.
the custodianship of the land, I think, is we're quite. My biggest joy in life, the best moments of the year are planting up fields into orchards. That's the best moments of the year, when the whole farm goes out and plants. That's great, and you're looking at a field that's become an orchard, and you know it's going to be there in 100 years' time, but the trees are going to be huge, and it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be full of nature. That's a very, I mean, maybe it's a really Dane thing, but it's a
bloody good answer.
It's a really great, and for everybody involved on the farm, that we all go and plant together, and that's the magic.
You share that?
I share that.
That's interesting. I think when you look at it that way, actually, the products and the liquids and...
I'm close in age to 100, and
Not quite.
it gives me a legacy.
Yeah. Well, that must be very, very, very lovely to hear. But no, it's a way I've never really thought about it this way, and I think perhaps because it's so unusual. But when you look at products, and oftentimes it's very easy to just say, well, this is what you make, and that's what you do. You make these products. But actually, if the imperative force here is actually more about being given the opportunity to work with the land and make what you want to make, and this is the thing that enables you to do that, that's a different dynamic altogether.
I mean, we obviously are totally committed in every way to the product, but fundamentally we're farmers. Sorry about the dog.
No worries. Matilda, Julian, thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.